Hello, this is Kingsley. I'm doing my last intervention. I must say that it has been an interesting conversation and I've learned a lot from colleagues. I'll quickly run through some of the highlights of my intervention so far. The first is that, or is the acceptance of the mega trend, and that is that both China, India, and Brazil are growing so fast. I realize that there's been a lot more focus on China than on India and Brazil. And that is probably because China poses the biggest economic threat to the EU as opposed to Brazil and India. But where it could be dicey is if China forges an alliance with either or both of those countries, then that could present a really formidable front. Then the other fact that I think we have to accept is the seeming unreliability of the United States. I mentioned in my first video that the US ordinarily would support the European Union because of strategic interest. But that is no longer the case. You can no longer rely on the United States. And then the third fact is the supranational nature of the European Union, which presents a lot of bureaucratic bottleneck and also a lack of coherence. So this makes the EU's position a little difficult. I'd like to also mention that even as we make these points, China is already flexing its muscles through the BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, through which it is exploring market opportunities for Chinese firms. Already 11 European countries, including Italy and Portugal, are forging partnerships with China. And that presents a dicey position for the EU, which is supposed to have a united front. But I wouldn't count the EU out just yet. I mentioned earlier that the GDP of the European Union collectively is about $19 trillion, while that of China is 12 trillion. Now, if you talk about GDP per capita, the European Union has GDP per capita of about $38,000, and China is a little above $16,000. So what this means is that the living standard is a lot higher in the EU than in China. In fact, technically, China is regarded as a developing country. So that is one huge advantage that the EU has. But it also has high integration in trade. So which means that it can present a united front to negotiate with China. So the next thing would be, what can the EU do? I would say that the first thing that it has to do is to accept the reality that China is a competitor. So any engagement must be based on that premise. So the idea of complementarity, I don't really think holds water. It has to be competition. You know, the EU has to act like China is a competitor. Within that competition, there can be cooperation or collaboration on global issues. That's fine, but it must accept the fact that they are competing. The EU should try to focus on a more balanced relationship with China. It appears that it's getting lopsided, with China making inroads into the European Union and the EU unable to make inroads into the Chinese market. So the EU must insist on that China liberalize its market so that it can have access. If it doesn't have access, then what do you have a relationship for if there's no reciprocity? The EU along this line must fight to protect intellectual property, because especially in technology, this is where it has comparative advantage. The last thing that I want to mention, and I mentioned this in my previous video, is that the EU must seek to forge strategic relationships with countries or regions. Catchment countries could be Brazil, Mexico, India, and other countries that are really growing. But I also mentioned that Africa is a very attractive option for the European Union. And then finally, I would emphasize that it takes two to tango. In a relationship between the EU and China, it cannot be based on one way. Why the EU must be ready to engage with China. China should be ready. And where China refuses to engage with the EU, then the EU must develop its own strategic alliances, those that will strengthen it when it gets to the negotiating table and when they want to deal on trade.